Hello, PHOTOPILLERS, Rafael the Bar here. Welcome to another masterclass. Today I'm with the great Dan Zafra because today we're going to learn how to use Astro modified cameras to photograph the Milky Way, the winter Milky Way especially. Isn't it, Dan? Welcome to the show. Thank you for
Hi,
being here
PhotoPilllers.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today in a new PhotoPills masterclass. I'm super happy, super thrilled to be here again with the PhotoPills team. So thanks first to Rafa for the invitation to come again here, and to all the PhotoPills team. I hope that we have a great time today, and I'm super excited about this topic. It's one of my favorite things in Milky Way photography. So get ready and let's get started.
Yes, it's going to be a long class on everything, on Astro modified cameras to photograph the Milky Way. And I'm sure that a lot of people in the PhotoPills community are very anxious and excited to learn from you, Dan. You're a real master of the night sky, the Milky Way. And we did already a master class on how to use star trackers to photograph the Milky Way. And today is going to be a really special class again.
Yeah, this is like a second part, like in the movies.
Yeah.
And today we are talking about a really interesting topic, like first winter Milky Way. I will explain more in the introduction, and then Astro modified cameras, something that is becoming more and more popular today in the world of astrophotography. And yeah, I'm really excited about this presentation.
Awesome. So, man, if you're ready for action, let's jump into the class. Guys, if you have a question, please leave a comment in the comments. And because we have the great Sandra Vallaure with us, and he will be helping us with your questions. So don't hesitate to ask anything you need. Done?
All right. Yep. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes. I haven't asked you to introduce yourself because I suppose many people know who is Dan Zafra, but I suppose you have your information on your slides to get introduced.
I'll do a small presentation. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect.
Can you see my screen? Everything is fine?
Yes. Yeah,
okay, perfect.
Fine. 200 people with us at the moment. So
cool.
Rock and roll.
All right. So first of all, Rafa is going to share all the slides of this presentation. I sent Rafa a PDF file with all the information, all the links, all the text, all the images. So that means that you don't have to take notes. You can take notes if you like, but if you just want to sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation, that's fine. Rafa will share the link to the PDF of the presentation in the description on YouTube and also in the comments. So that will be there. Secondly, like Rafa said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will be more than happy to reply to all the questions through this presentation. And also we will do a live Q&A at the end of the presentation where you can also ask anything about the topic, winter Milky Way, astro modification, or star trackers, whatever question that I can help. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Perfect.
Today's presentation is going to be divided in two main parts. The first part is going to be about the winter Milky Way. As you know, we are here, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. We are in the prime time for winter Milky Way. And that's one of the main reasons why I thought that it would be helpful and maybe interesting to talk a little bit about the winter Milky Way. So we'll talk about why photographing the winter Milky Way, and especially about the planning, which is one of the most important things. We'll talk about the planning, using PhotoPills, and using other tools. The second part of this presentation is about camera gear, and more specifically about astro modifications. That's another really interesting topic. I highly recommend watching that. Even if you don't plan to astro modify your camera, it's something that maybe many people don't know, and I think that is really interesting to see. So the second part is going to be astro modified. It's going to be a super packed masterclass. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and feel free to ask any questions. Just to start, talking just briefly about my background. My name is Dan Zafra. I'm a professional landscape astrophotographer. I'm original from Madrid, Spain. That's why you see this accent, and you'll listen to this Spanish accent throughout the next couple of hours. So be used to it. And yeah, my main passions are traveling and photography. Those are the things I've been doing over the last years, and those are the things I enjoy the most. I love traveling around the world, and landscape photography is my favorite topic. In landscape astrophotography, my main passion is photographing the night sky. I've been chasing dark skies around the world over the last years, and I like photographing any night sky. My career has been focused over the last years, especially in the US, most specifically in the Southwest, in places like Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, and all those beautiful dark skies that we have in the US. But I've been traveling around the world too, in Europe, in South America, and in other locations. Along with this passion for shooting, for traveling, I have a deep passion for sharing. I'm the co-founder of Capture the Atlas. This is a travel and photography website where we run a travel blog and also a photography website. Here I share plenty of photography articles, guides, tutorials, inspirational articles like the Milky Way Photographer of the Year, and many more things. I also have and run an online academy where I have a Milky Way course with plenty of instruction, tutorials, and other things. And then along with this passion for sharing online, I also like and love sharing this passion in the field. I run photography workshops and tours around the world in many places that are beautiful to capture the night sky. Again, like in the US and other international destinations. And those are basically my main passions: traveling, shooting, and sharing. Now, talking a bit more into today's topic about the winter Milky Way, we're going to start first talking about how is normally the Milky Way season for a normal photographer, how everything starts. Probably you are familiar with this. We are basically in maybe March, April, early spring, a bit later if you're a bit lazy, but that's roughly the time where we'll start going out, shooting. And that's when you see the Milky Way core rising over the horizon. That's what we know about the Milky Way season or Milky Way core season. And that's when we go out to capture these beautiful Milky Way panoramas when the core is rising and we have the beautiful arch of the Milky Way in the sky, like you can see in all these images, like in this one from Utah. As we go out in the season and we move into late spring, early summer, we start seeing more the Milky Way rising in the sky, doing like a diagonal line, and that allows to capture also beautiful images of our galaxy. So in this image, for example, in the Bristlecone Pines, you can see how the Milky Way is rising. Or in this one from Arches National Park. Or in these two images, like in the Big Sur in California. So that's roughly when we shoot during the summer. This one in Monument Valley. And also panoramas, even though the Milky Way is very high in the sky, you can also capture Milky Way panoramas. As we get later in the season, like for example, in August, September, early fall, the Milky Way, you can shoot the arch like in the Southern Hemisphere, like for example, here in Peru. But the normal, typical shooting is more like a vertical shot. You're probably familiar. This is when we are shooting in shorts or in t-shirt. And that's usually at the end of the season. Like in these images, the Milky Way is getting more and more vertical. Then we get to the end of the season, late September, early October, the Milky Way is setting. And then after this period is when we enter in another period that I call the camera hibernation. This is when you leave your camera bag in your corner, you forget about it, and then you don't pick it up until next March, next April, until next season. Then when you pick up your camera, you don't remember how to change your camera brightness, you don't remember how to focus, and that's usually the normal Milky Way season for most photographers. But I'm here today to show you something different. I'm here today to show you that you can shoot the Milky Way year-round. And you can also take beautiful images regardless of the time of year. So for example, and yeah, there is no such thing as Milky Way season. Remember this because this is key. This image, for example, taken at the end of the Milky Way season, beginning of the winter, which is around October, mid-October. This is in White Pocket in the border between Utah and Arizona. Beautiful, beautiful place for night photography. And here we have, for example, the Orion constellation. Then same night, just pointing at another place in the sky, where we have here the Cygnus region. We also have a beautiful image with no Milky Way core. Also the Milky Way, the winter Milky Way arch, which is one of the most beautiful things that you can photograph during the winter. And we're actually in the prime time now to take these kind of images. This one, for example, in Death Valley, where you can see the entire winter Milky Way arch. Or this one here, same example. We can capture a beautiful, beautiful Milky Way arch. Another one here in Point Reyes National Seashore, and here again you can see another Milky Way, winter Milky Way shot. Or this one in Waimea Canyon in Hawaii. Or this one in the Southern Hemisphere. That's another note. We are talking today about winter Milky Way, but for those of you who are in the Southern Hemisphere, in Australia, New Zealand, Patagonia, whatever you are, for you is the summer Milky Way. So don't get me wrong. I know it's a winter. When I talk about winter Milky Way, for you is your summer Milky Way. But we're talking about, the area in the Milky Way core where you cannot see the core. So like this beautiful image, for example, in Australia, captured by my friend JL. Now, the main reason is why photographing the Milky Way. What's the main reason to go out at night in the middle of winter to shoot the night sky? Well, there are many reasons to do it, and I want to explain today a few of them, like photographing the galaxy year-round, capture Orion and other areas of the night sky, shoot original images, or stay away from the crowds. So the main reason to me is to photograph the Milky Way year-round. You don't have to put your camera gear into hibernation mode, like we said. You can shoot year-round, which means that you can shoot during the 12 months of the year. So you have an extra 4 or 5 months of shooting compared to the Milky Way core season. Especially for those of you who are in places at northern latitudes like the UK, Canada, Alaska, the Milky Way core season is super short. It's maybe like a few days a year, couple of weeks. And in those latitudes, you can, for example, shoot Orion and the winter Milky Way for a longer period of time. So that's one of the main reasons. And also more opportunities to practice. That's what I said before. When you leave your camera for 3-4 months, trust me, it happens to me. You become rusty. Even if I leave my camera and I don't shoot for 1-2 months, I become super rusty. I can't remember the settings and I have to practice a few days. If you keep shooting throughout the year, you're going to be more in tune with your shooting. You're going to be more proficient and your shooting is going to be better. The other reason is to photograph areas that are not visible during the Milky Way core season. So when you capture those beautiful images and panoramas of the Milky Way core, there are other areas of the night sky that you cannot see. Like, for example, the Orion constellation. We're going to talk a lot today about the Orion constellation, but not only about Orion, but also other stars, nebula. I'm going to show you here now a few examples. Like constellations, like we said, we have here the Orion constellation, Taurus, Canis Major. Apart from constellations, we also have stars that we cannot see during the core season, like, for example, Rigel, Aldebaran, Sirius, Betelgeuse. We also have nebulae, like the Orion Nebula, which is the most popular in the winter night sky constellations. Nebulae, the Horsehead Nebula, Barnard's Loop, Lambda Orionis, the California Nebula, and many more. We also have other elements, like, for example, star clusters, like the Pleiades, galaxies like Andromeda. I know we can see Andromeda during the core season, but you can also see it now during the winter time. So that's also one of the main reasons to shoot the winter night sky. Also to shoot original images. And this is something that is more and more relevant today. We are seeing more and more images that all of them are taken in the same locations. They look the same with the same composition. But shooting the winter Milky Way will allow you to capture more original images. Like, for example, we have here probably the most classical image in Death Valley. This is in the Badwater Basin, and we have the classical Milky Way core rising, creating this arch in the sky. And what I did last winter, for example, was trying to get a different, a more original shot, having the telescope peak, which is the highest peak in Death Valley. So I went there in early February and I captured this image, the one I showed you before. And this is a completely different shot. I haven't seen many images from here during the winter time, and you're capturing something more original. Another example is this one here. This is Point Reyes in the California shore. You've probably seen plenty of great Milky Way images from renowned photographers like Michael Shenblum and other guys. And last winter, for example, I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to try to capture something different in Point Reyes. So I went there over the weekend, prepared my camera, and I was lucky to have clear skies because this area is usually pretty foggy. I was lucky with the skies, and I captured this image that I've never seen before. I had never seen a winter Milky Way image in Point Reyes. So in this case, for example, NASA, they just appointed this image as astronomy picture of the day. And I was really happy because that was a big achievement for me. And that's because I was trying to find something original, something new.
Beautiful
and
image.
Thank you, Rafa. And the last reason, last but not least, is to stay away from the crowds. I don't know you, but in my case, I hate being, surrounded by photographers at night with flashing lights, flashing red lights, noise, and you know what I mean, of course. If you are going to like a popular location, a national park during the prime time, maybe during the summer, you'll find a lot of people everywhere. Trust me, if you go for winter Milky Way, you'll be alone, or most likely you'll be alone. And that's something I'm looking for when I'm shooting the Milky Way or the night sky. I like being in peace. I like being quiet, doing my work, doing my images, enjoying the beautiful night skies. And that's something important for me. That's why I'm enjoying more and more shooting the night sky during the winter time. Now, getting into the planning. Planning is probably one of the most fundamental things for this kind of images. Some things like the shooting, the post-processing can be similar to normal Milky Way core images, but the planning, there are a few differences and a few things to consider. That's why I wanted to include today a small section about planning, and that's what we're going to get into now. So talking about planning and when to photograph the winter Milky Way in the Northern Hemisphere, starting always in the Northern Hemisphere. So the season goes from October until March. Now, there are two main parts during the season. The first part is from October to December, and that's the best time to capture single images of Orion. When the Orion constellation is rising in the sky, and that's, again, from late fall to early winter, that's the best time to capture the Orion constellation with any feature in the foreground in your landscape. For panoramas, the best time is from December to early March. That's the prime time when Orion is going down again, and you have this nice arch in the sky, and you can capture your winter Milky Way images. If you do it, for example, at the end of the season, like in March, you can also capture the winter Milky Way arch with the zodiacal light, which is another cool feature in the sky. So that's another option. Now, for the Southern Hemisphere, the season is pretty similar. It goes from late September to late March. Here we have a picture by a great astrophotographer from Argentina, my friend Gonzalo Zantile, and that's in the Southern Hemisphere. And then for panoramas, the season goes mainly from October to January. So this is the opposite to the Northern Hemisphere. As you see in this Milky Way, winter Milky Way panorama captured by my friend J.L. Cantabrana. And this was captured a few days ago. He told me it was in December 20th. And as you see, you can also photograph these beautiful images in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, for planning these images, I recommend using two tools. The first one, of course, is PhotoPills. When you want to plan your winter Milky Way images, the same as for your Milky Way normal images, you can check the PhotoPills moon calendar. Just go to those days when you have a new moon or a partial new moon, and it will be super easy to plan when you can photograph Orion or the winter Milky Way. Now, to check the exact times for photographing Orion, this is a tool that I have just created, and it's a calendar to see when Orion is going to be visible. So you can call it a Orion calendar if you like. And in this calendar, according to the moon, the sun, you can see when the Orion constellation is going to be visible for a particular location. So this is, for example, for the US Southwest in Kanab in Utah. You can see that this weekend, for example, is January 21st. Orion is going to be visible from 7:15 until 3:46 a.m. in the morning. And you can see also the average position is from 15 degrees until it sets in the sky. So you can photograph Orion and then the arch. Here you can see at a glance the best days. Like, for example, in pink, you can see the best days to photograph Orion. Light blue, days when Orion is visible for a short time. And then dark blue, those days when Orion is not visible. As you can see here, just at a glance, the best time to shoot the winter Milky Way is at the beginning of the year, January to March, and then from late September through December. During the summer, Orion is not visible. That's what we call the normal Milky Way core season. If you want to download a calendar, I've created 13 different calendars. I wish I could create more, but this takes a lot of work. You can download them for free. Just Google Capture the Atlas Milky Way Orion calendar, or this website, capturetheatlas.com/Orion-calendar. If you download the PDF from Rafa, you can just click here and it will take you directly to the download website. So I hope that this is helpful, and it's a free tool and you can use it to plan your winter Milky Way images. Now, talking about where to photograph the winter Milky Way. This is another interesting thing when you're planning. This is pretty similar to planning any Milky Way core image. So I don't want to get too much into this, just briefly mention that you can use light pollution maps, use a Bortle scale to see how's the Bortle scale for a particular location, use the altitude, check the altitude in that location, or use weather apps. And this is especially important in the Northern Hemisphere. As you know, winters are usually more cloudy, colder. So you can use a weather app like windy.com or Clear Outside to plan your images. Talking now about the orientation in the Northern Hemisphere, and here is a very good tip. Single shots of Orion from October to January, as we said, are going to be, the Orion is going to be roughly in the southeast. So as you can see here, we have the southeast, and this is the Orion constellation with the Milky Way band. And this is a good tip. So as you know, the Milky Way core in the Northern Hemisphere starts rising from the southeast. So whenever you see a location or a place where the Milky Way core is rising, that's going to be a good spot to have a beautiful image of Orion rising in the same place because it's the southeast. For panoramas, this is a little bit different. Panoramas in the Northern Hemisphere go from the south to the north. And as you see, the Orion constellation is going to be in the middle or inside the Milky Way galactic band. You can take west as a reference for the middle of your panorama. I'm going to show you later an example with PhotoPills in the Northern Hemisphere, and you'll see this composition. Now, in the Southern Hemisphere, it's just the opposite. For single shots of Orion from December to March, again, this is the opposite to the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to be in the Northwest. As you can see here, Northwest, with Orion in a nice position to capture single frames. For panoramas, again, it's the opposite. So panoramas are going to go from the north through the south. And the main difference is that Orion is going to be outside the galactic arch. Orion is going to be out, and the east is going to be the reference point for the center of your panorama. So now that we saw how to, when and where to plan your images, I'm going to show you a quick example with PhotoPills. So you can see how to plan your winter Milky Way shots using PhotoPills. More specifically, I'm going to show you how to use, how to plan this shot in the Badwater Basin, the one with telescope peak that I captured last winter. So I don't know if there's any questions so far, Rafa, or if I can get now into this section.
We have questions on Astro modified, so maybe we can wait for.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
All right. So for planning these images, if you're familiar with planning with PhotoPills, most of these tools are going to be familiar, but there are a few things that you have to consider. First things first, select the date and pin your location. As you know, you can select here the date. I'm assuming that we are planning a shot for this weekend. This weekend is, again, new moon is a good time for shooting the winter Milky Way. So January 21st, this Saturday, we are planning this shot. It's in the backwater basin, so I'm roughly pinning my location here near the parking lot. And I know that Telescope Peak, which is there, is my main target. So Telescope Peak is gonna be my focus. I'm gonna place Telescope Peak in the west, which is the middle of my panorama. And as we said, the panorama is gonna go from the south to the north. According to that, I'm gonna set my position. I'm pinning here my position in the backwater basin. And the second thing that I have to do is simple, just tap the Milky Way dots to confirm your position. As soon as you tap here, this icon, you'll see here all the Milky Way band. And here's the main difference compared to planning your Milky Way normal shots. In PhotoPills, when you're planning your Milky Way core images, you'll see the galactic core like these big dots. In the winter Milky Way, you'll see that all the dots have the same diameter. All the dots are the same. But never mind, the logic is the same. According to the angle, you can plan your panorama. Third step, fine-tune your location. According to this composition and to the place of the galactic arch, you can just change your pin to the best location. Fourth, you can use the field of view mode to plan your shot. This is especially useful for panoramas. So just go to your layer section here in PhotoPills. Click there. Just press the FOV mode. And once you press there, you can select here on top your main settings. So here, for instance, I'm shooting with my Sony a7 III. You can select your lens. I'm shooting with a 35mm. And portrait mode. As you know, for shooting panoramas, always shoot in portrait mode. Taking that here, you will have here the field of view. And I'm taking this line in the middle as a reference. This is going to be my reference to overlap 50%, like in any Milky Way panorama. So now I'm going to move my field of view. And that way I can know how many images I need to capture my winter Milky Way panorama. In this case, for instance, I need 11 images. Last step is using the night AR mode or augmented reality mode in the field. Always when you're in the field, go during the day, scout for compositions, for nice formations in the foreground, and then use PhotoPills AR mode to check where it's going to be the Milky Way. Here,
I've seen that you've improved our night AR with the constellations.
That's something I wanted to mention.
It's coming, by the way. It's coming.
In PhotoPills, you will see the Milky Way, the winter Milky Way band, which is here. You won't see the Orion constellation, and that was my personal petition for Rafa today. But you said that is in development. That's fine.
Yeah, it's coming.
But I think that it would be super useful to have Orion in the night air mode. At least Orion. I'm not saying all the constellations, but Orion, I think it will be cool.
Yeah, I do agree.
And then for the panorama, just use your mobile, slide your mobile, through the through the day sky to see where is going to be your panorama. As you see here, we're going from the south, west is going to be the middle, and then we go until the north. So we are basically capturing the entire panorama as we planned. As you see, it's pretty easy. It's just 4 or 5 steps, and you can easily plan your images and make sure that you succeed in capturing your images. So this section is completed, and now we're going to start the second part of this presentation, which is about camera gear and Astro modified cameras. I don't know if there's any questions so far about planning or anything about winter Milky Way shots.
No, I think everybody knows how to plan the Milky Way. So
all right, yeah. So
everything is on. Getting questions on Astro modified.
All right, we are getting there now. So perfect. For camera gear and Astro modifications, I'm going to mention very briefly a few things about general camera gear, because most of you know the camera gear from Milky Way, and then we'll dive into Astro modifications. So for general camera gear recommendations, this is for winter Milky Way or any night landscape image. Full frame cameras, as you know, they have bigger pixel density, bigger pixels, less noise. So always full frame cameras. Prime lenses, this is for me is a must. So using those prime lenses like 20, 24, 35 millimeters that are, have usually a bigger aperture, they have less distortion, less aberrations, a good tripod, and a good intervalometer. Those are basically the things we need. We don't need anything else. Then if we want to get into more specific, more advanced shooting, we can use a start tracker. This is recommended to use better settings. And here I strongly recommend checking the masterclass I did with Rafa that was last year, 2021, about Milky Way with a stat tracker. We cover everything about a stat tracker, models, planning, what they are, how they work. So if you have any questions or you want to dive into stat trackers, I highly recommend checking that PhotoPills masterclass. With a stat tracker, we can also capture longer exposures and more colors in the H alpha regions. Don't worry, this sounds a bit strange. We'll talk a lot today about H alpha, hydrogen alpha. More about this later. And then another reason to use a tracker is like some models like the Ventro Polaris, which is a new tracker, can automate some tasks like polar alignment, track panoramas. So using a tracker is becoming easier and easier. And they allow you to capture better images. So it's something I recommend if you are already an intermediate or advanced photographer. Some specific recommendations for winter Milky Way. A sturdy tripod. This is actually for any Milky Way, but especially in winter. As you know, in winter we have colder nights, more wind. And the wind is actually the biggest problem. So I recommend using a beefy, sturdy tripod. In my case, I usually for my daytime images, I have a light travel tripod. But for my night images, I use this Sunway Photo beef strip tripod that is perfect for capturing these images with no shakiness. And yeah, all fine. Secondly, a lens warmer. If you live in a place that tends to be cold and humid, like if you're, I don't know, in the Oregon coast or in Maine, this tool can be pretty useful because your lens can be fogged up during the night, and having a lens warmer can be very helpful. And the last thing, especially in those places where it's cold, is using photographic gloves and warmer. This makes a huge difference, not only for Milky Way, also for Northern Lights. Especially if you are shooting, as I said, in very cold climates. I use this brand. It's called the Heat Company. There are other brands, but whatever you use, make sure that you warm up, layer up, and be ready because some nights can be very cold. And yeah, now we're going to talk about the main topic, which is Astro modified cameras. Now, before getting into this topic, I want to mention my experience with Astro modified cameras. I don't consider myself a complete expert in this topic. I'm going to talk just about my experience. I've been shooting with Astro modified cameras over the last couple of years. I started with a Sony a7 II, and then I changed to a Sony a7 III. So I've been shooting the last 2 years with those two cameras. With a visible and H alpha modification. I will talk more about this later. And I'm going to talk about that. I don't do any deep sky photography. I don't use astronomy filters. So I cannot talk about that. I'm going to talk mainly about astro-modded cameras for landscape astrophotography. So the main thing about astro-modified cameras, which is the main goal of an astro camera? Well, the main goal is to capture more light. It's as simple as that. Capture more light, especially from emission nebulae. By capturing more light, it's logical that we can apply better settings. So as you can capture more light, you can lower your ISO to have more dynamic range. You can close your aperture to maybe have less distortion, less aberrations, or you can just shoot for a shorter period of time and make your shooting faster. The final goal, the end goal of any astro modification is to get more quality in your images. So that's the end goal. Now, this topic can get very, very technical. So here, first of all, I want to do 2 disclaimers. So first disclaimer, this topic can get very technical. I try to make it as digestible as possible, as easy as possible, without trying to not get into oversimplification, but trying to simplify a little bit the things because this can get super technical. Second disclaimer, don't blame me if you want to have an Astro modified camera after this presentation. Because after the Star Tracker presentation, Rafa, everybody was telling me, oh damn, because of you I had to buy now a new star tracker. So don't blame me if you want an Astro camera after seeing this, okay?
That's a good point. Good disclaimer.
All right. So if we talk about Astro modification, first we need to talk about light. Light is all electromagnetic radiation. And as you know, there are multiple types of light. There is X-rays, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, but the human eye or eyes can only see this, the visible light, the thing that you see in the middle. So what is the visible light? Visible light ranges in wavelengths between 400 and 700 nanometers, which is between the ultraviolet and the infrared. As you see here in this infographic, this is what your eyes can see. Everything from the ultraviolet to the infrared in this range. These colors are coincidentally the colors that you can see in the rainbow. So the red, the orange, the yellow, that's what we call the visible light, which is basically what our eyes can see. Now, this is very important for this, and this again is the key thing of the Astro modifications. Many people don't know this, but camera sensors can capture more light than the visible light spectrum. So camera can capture multiple sources of light, not only visible light, but can also capture infrared, ultraviolet, and more types of light. So naturally, they can capture more than what our eyes can see. Now, what's the problem? Manufacturers use filters to block the light and make the images look as true to the human eye as possible. So they try to make the images look as natural to the human eye as they can. So they use different types of filters that mainly block the UV, the ultraviolet, and the infrared light. But the problem is that apart from blocking the UV and the infrared light, they are also blocking a big part of the visible light spectrum. So they are blocking more light. And that's what we are doing with the Astro modification. So I created this infographic so you know a little bit better how these filters and the blocking of the light works. Here on the right side, we have the image sensor, the camera sensor. And on the left side, we have those filters that are blocking the light. Those filters are called low-pass filters. Traditionally, DSLR cameras, we had two types of filter. The low-pass filter one, usually attached to an infrared absorbing glass, and then a low-pass filter two, which is usually called the color filter. And that's a filter that is blocking most of the H-alpha, hydrogen alpha, and the light that we cannot see. Something important to mention is that in modern cameras, Sony, mirrorless cameras, all these filters are stacked together. So instead of having like maybe 1, 2, 3 different filters, you'll see like a sandwich with all the filters together. And there's a stack of filters. And that's something critical for the Astro modification. All those filters, as we said, are blocking that infrared and that UV light. Now, as we said, the goal of any Astro modification is to replace the low-pass filter with a different filter that expands the light sensitivity of your camera, especially the light sensitivity, the light gathering capabilities in the H-alpha color spectrum, which are the red colors. So which is the H-alpha, the hydrogen alpha? If you never heard this, maybe it sounds like something strange. Hydrogen alpha is one of the most common types of light in the space. In outer space, we have huge clouds of gas and dust, which are composed by hydrogen alpha. It is the brightest light in the visible light spectrum. It's super bright. And the thing is that hydrogen alpha is a red light that is not visible to the naked eye. So even if you go to the darkest location on Earth, you'll never see this with your naked eye. However, your camera could capture this. But as we said, it's partially blocked by those filters that the manufacturers are installing between your lens, your camera, and the sensor. But yeah, the main goal is to capture that light, and the main light is the hydrogen alpha or H-alpha. If I'm going too fast, just let me know, okay? Because I know that this can be a little bit technical.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
All right, so another interesting thing. How is a camera converted? How is a camera conversion? And this is super, super interesting. There are three main options. So the first option is to ship your camera to a lab. You can get your camera, maybe you have a second body that you don't use, or you just get a new second body, and you just ship it to a lab that take care of the Astro modification. Second option, you can buy a brand new Astro modified camera. You can just call the lab and tell them, look, I want a new Astro camera. So they get a brand new camera for you. They Astro modify it, and they ship to you a brand new camera, which is already Astro modified. That's the second option. And the third option is the do-it-yourself at home. And as I said, is not recommended. You'll probably see in forums that people Astro modify their own cameras. Probably in the next slides that you'll see, after seeing the next slides, you won't want to do it. Astro modifying your camera is super risky. And I have several friends that try to do it and they broke their cameras. As you know, as soon as you open your camera, there is no guarantee from a warranty from the manufacturer. So it's very risky. And even if you try to send it to a lab, probably they will refuse to take your camera. So my recommendation, don't do it yourself at home, especially with the new mirrorless cameras that can get more complex. So that's an option, but I don't recommend it. Now, in the next slides, I'm going to show you how's the Astro modification process. I'm going to thank, first of all, to Clarence Spencer from Spencer's Camera. That's one of the main labs doing Astro modifications in the US. I've done my modifications with them. And since I was doing this presentation, I reached out to Clarence and I told him if we could share a few images about how's the process of a modification, because most people ship their cameras, get their cameras back, they look the same, but the camera can capture more colors. And they had no idea of what's done in the camera. So don't freak out, because these guys are very professionals. Well, these guys or any professional lab, they are professionals. They know what they're doing. But yeah, basically, this is the first step. So I know.
What do you mean, Dan? Don't you dare to do it live? Huh? Take one of your cameras and just make the operation for us?
I will never, ever do this to my camera. I'll freak out. So the first step is removing something like, I don't know how many screws, maybe 20 screws in your camera in different places. So you have to disassemble your entire camera. And it's not only removing the cover, it's just removing the dials, it's removing cables. So there's a lot of things going on. So the first step is the camera disassembly, which, as you can see, your camera looks like that. This is a Canon. This model is the Canon EOS R5, one of the most popular cameras nowadays.
That's a cheap
and
one.
A great camera to Astro modify. Second step, we remove the low pass filter. As we told you in the new mirrorless cameras, these low pass filters are stacked. So it's like a stack of different filters. So what these guys do in the lab is just removing this low pass filter. They remove it and they take it out. Third step, they install a new filter. And this filter is going to allow that new light transmission. It's going to allow your camera to capture more light. There are two different types of filter that you can install. We'll talk more about this later, don't worry. But yeah, this step is basically installing the new filter. Fourth step, custom shutter adjustments. When you're doing an Astro modifications, there are some things that are changed in your camera shutter. So professional labs, they need to readjust the shutter using different tools. Honestly, I have no idea what they do at this step, but I just know that they do these shutter adjustments.
It looks complex.
Yes. Fifth step, and this is optional. This can be done only in a few cameras, not in all of them, but there's an installation of a heat reduction system. Most of the labs offer this as an optional step. You have to pay an extra. But what they do is basically installing a thermal pad in the internal circuits of the camera. As you see here, we have this thermal pad, which the main goal of this pad is to
Oh, I think that Dan is frozen. He will be back soon. Don't leave. Don't leave. I think he just had a slightly issue with the connection, so we'll wait for a few seconds for him to come back. Sandra, tell me that I am still here too. I suppose that the complex process that was explained as to to make the camera to turn the camera into an Astro modified one is it's so scary that the connection went off. So tell me in the chat, what do you like the class? Do you have any other you have questions now? You have the opportunity to ask and type your questions in the chat, so Sandra will send the questions to us for Dan to answer you. So Vanessa is asking, Rafa, you could show us how to pull up how many shots needed for panel in the field of view was created. Yeah, that's a good one. I think I'll do a video on that too. How to plan panoramas with the field of view tool in the planner. That would be cool. I'm jotting down the question, Vanessa, and I'll make a video on it. It's pretty simple. You just need to go to the layers button, as Dan showed you, and turn on the field of view map tool. Set your camera, shows your focal length and everything, and then you just drag or swipe the field of view across the scene until you count the number of photos. See what Dan is saying. I think he's back. He's back.
I'm back here.
You're back. Welcome back. No problem.
Sorry about that.
It happens. This is the beauty of doing live streams.
Yeah. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
I don't know, Rafa, where was the connection missed?
Right where you were explaining this additional feature to add this sensor or this. I think it wasn't this slide you're showing me now.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying that this is an optional step, which is an installation of a heat reduction system. Again, this can be only performed in some cameras, not in all of them. And what they do is installing this thermal pad in the circuits of the camera. So what this does is prevent the camera from heating, and that way you can prevent hot pixels, noise, and it's a way of keeping your camera cool at night. As you know, when you're doing long exposures, it's normal to have this kind of issues. Next step is the focal plane calibration. This is another critical step. When you are doing an Astro modification, the low pass filter has a determined size, a width, and the filter that they are reinstalling has a different size. That means that the focal plane is changing. So what they do, usually using this machine here, they do a recalibration of the focal plane. That way, when you are focusing your lens, it's working perfectly fine again. And then after the focus recalibration, labs do a focus calibration test. They usually take 50mm lens on other type of lenses, and they run tests to make sure that your focus is fine. This is, again, a critical step to make sure that everything is working fine. And that's why it's important to do it with professionals, because even if you can change yourself your filter, it's very easy to mess up something like this, like having a bad focus, light leaks, and other kind of issues. Some labs allow to send along with your camera, you can ship a lens. Like, for example, if you're using a 20mm or a 35mm, you can ship your lens along with your camera, and they can recalibrate your camera according to your lens to make sure that everything is working fine. I never sent any lens, and all my cameras were working fine. So I never had any issues, but it's something just to consider. Getting now into the main filter options that we have for the modification. And this is one of the main questions that I get. When you want to Astro modify your camera, there are two different types of filter that you can install: the visible plus H alpha or the full spectrum. Here in the picture, you can see the three different filters. Here on the left, we have the low pass filter. In the middle, we have the visible plus H alpha. This is the most common filter that I will explain now. And this is the clear filter, also called the full spectrum modification. So what we are doing is removing this filter on the left and replacing this filter by either this in the middle or this on the right. We're going to start seeing first the visible plus H alpha filter. As you see, we're replacing all the low pass filters that we had before by a single filter, which is this one here, H alpha, which is blocking the infrared and the UV light, but is allowing all the H alpha light to get into the sensor. So visible plus H alpha is blocking all that light down to the H alpha part of the spectrum. So it's capturing all the visible light spectrum from the 350 nanometers to the 700 nanometers, all the visible light. The key thing about this filter, and also about the Astro modification, is that we are increasing the sensitivity to capture light by around 10%. This can be roughly maybe 0.5 stops of light, which, as you know, is huge in night photography. Even half a stop, 1 stop can be a huge difference in your images. So apart from capturing more red colors in your images, you'll also capture more light. And this is the most common modification for nightscapes and also for Milky Way. This graph is going to be very helpful, I think, to illustrate how you are capturing more light thanks to this Astro modification. So in this graph, for example, we have on the left side, this is the light transmission. And on this axis, we have the wavelength. And all this is the visible light spectrum. Normal camera, which is the green line. This is a standard camera. As you can see, we start getting light transmission from 400 nanometers. But then after 500 nanometers, we start seeing a drop, which is like a slowly drop until the 700. Okay, it's dropping like that. If we replace the low pass filters by an H alpha filter, we do an Astro modification. Now we have the orange line. And as you see, we are capturing everything from 400 up to 700 or 680, where there is a sudden drop to the end. So which is the key thing about this? H alpha, which is the light that we are capturing, is around 656 nanometers. Is here. If we compare a stock camera, a standard camera with an Astro camera, a standard camera is going to be capturing around 20%, which is roughly there. Whereas an H alpha camera is going to capture around 90%. So we are capturing almost 4 times more H alpha and more light compared to a standard camera. The thing is that we are not only capturing more H alpha light, more hydrogen alpha, we're also capturing more light in general. All this light here, all this yellow triangle is generally more light. So that's one of the main benefits of the Astro camera. Don't think only about the beautiful colors in the night sky, think also about more light. And more light at the end of the day is more quality. Secondly, full spectrum. This is the second type of modification, and it's basically installing a clear filter in front of the sensor, and all the light is hitting the sensor. There is nothing blocking any type of light. With full spectrum, what we do is installing a clear filter that allows the camera to capture all the light that the sensor can see. So the camera is not limited by any filter. It's just limited by the own camera. The light gathering capabilities is what the camera can capture. So it's roughly from 350 nanometers to 1000 nanometers. There is a bigger increase in the sensitivity to capture light, almost as double as a normal stock camera. I put an asterisk here because even though with a full spectrum camera, you can capture maybe double as much light as with a normal camera, the thing is that with a full spectrum, you have to use filters. You cannot use a full spectrum camera with no filters because your images will look super strange. You will see strange colors, aberrations. So full spectrum cameras are meant to be used with filters, infrared filters, oxygen, sulfur, deep sky filters, whatever. And whenever you put a filter, you are blocking light. This is the most popular modification for infrared photography and also for some types of deep sky imaging. Here, if you see the graph compared to the previous graph, as you see, the full spectrum goes on top of the other graphs, and we're capturing all the spectrum of light. There is no limitation, and we're capturing the full spectrum. Seeing the main differences between visible plus H alpha and full spectrum, the main benefits of the visible plus H alpha is that it doesn't require any additional filters. You'll have a filter installed in your camera sensor, and that's it. You don't have to use any other filters. That means that it's easier to use. And the other benefit is that you can do any daytime shooting with a custom white balance. We'll get more into this later, how to shoot daytime images with a visible and H alpha. So don't worry, because this is one of the main questions. If you can shoot during the day with an Astro camera, we'll get into that. The main cons about a visible and H alpha modification is that it's less versatile. So there is no way that you can do any infrared imaging. So it's less versatile. That to me is the main cons. Full spectrum, the main benefit is that it's more versatile. So if you want to do, for example, infrared photography, or you want to do deep sky using different filters, this camera, this modification is going to be much more useful. The cons, to me, there are a lot of cons about full spectrum, is that it requires filters for different imaging. So as we said, if you want to shoot a specific type of image, you have to use a filter. And every filter is more money, which is also more expensive. It's more difficult to use. You need to have a better knowledge about what you're using and what you're doing. And there are more possible issues like infrared leaks, start bloating, and other issues that we will discuss later. So there are more possible problems. Also, for shooting during the day, you can still do it, but you need a called OWB, which is an original white balance filter. So yes, you can shoot during the day, but you need an additional filter. Conclusion, and this is my personal view, another disclaimer, this is my personal opinion, personal choice. Probably you talk to another astrophotographer and they give you another opinion. In my opinion, visible and H alpha is the easiest, the cheapest, and the most recommended option for landscape astrophotographers. Full spectrum is recommended, in my opinion, for other purposes, like if you want to do astro, infrared, deep sky, and more type of images, and also if you are probably a more advanced photographer. I'm going to show you now a few examples. I don't know, Rafa, if you want to shoot any questions, or if I can keep going ahead.
Oh, I have many questions. We have Rob Berkunterer. Does that capturing more light also show up on the histogram?
Yes, I'm going to show you an example now. I'm going to show you an example so you can see how the histogram is changing.
Cool.
That doesn't that maybe we can leave the questions for, well, you can ask now, but there are a few things I have to explain yet that probably.
So let's leave the questions for the end.
All right. Perfect. So for examples for Astro modified cameras, here I have 2 images taken with the same shutter speed, 230 seconds using a stat tracker, same aperture, f2, same ISO, 640. The only difference is that the image on the left was taken with a stock Sony A1. So this is not modified. Image on the right side was taken with a Sony A7 III Astro modified. So if we look at the images, just like these are raw files, okay? Completely no adjustments, anything. This is just straight out of camera. Just the first thing that we see is that there is more light in the image on the right side. So just at a glance, we can see that there is more light. And there is also a bit more of color. Maybe it's not very noticeable because it's a raw file, but as you edit your images and you start doing stretching, color adjustments, you will see how the reds are popping in those images taken with an Astro camera. So if we edit your images doing some basic color adjustments, color balance, and a little bit of a stretching, boom. Here we can see the difference. So this is what you said before. A stock camera like the Sony A1 in this case, with no filters, no modification, is capturing the H alpha. You can see here a faint hydrogen alpha nebula in the Orion constellation. But this is what we said, it's around 20-25% of the possible light. On the other hand, with the Astro camera, we're capturing much more light and much more colors. So as you see here, the Horsehead Nebula, these have red moon called the Barnard's Loop, which is very prominent. This area here. So we're capturing around 90% of that hydrogen alpha. Another example, and this time the Milky Way core. Here we have the Sony a7R4 stock camera, no modification on the left side. And on the right side, again, we have the Sony a7 III Astro modified with the H alpha filter. Same settings, 110 seconds, f2.5, ISO 1250. The main thing that we see here is that there are some areas like this nebulae here, there, are becoming more prominent even in the raw files. And then the other thing, the question that you said before, Rafa, is the histogram. So if you compare the histogram, on the left side, you can see that the histogram is midtones, but a little bit tilted towards the left. But in the Astro image, as you see, the histogram is in the midtones, but tilts more toward the right. So we are capturing more light and more colors, as you see in this histogram here. Here you can see an example doing, again, basic color adjustments and a little bit of a stretching, not much. And you can see how those reds are popping in the Astro modified image. So all those regions. I'm going to do another zoom now so you can see better the detail. And here, for example, in Antares, you can see how we have on the right side more reds. Also in this nebulae here, more light. So generally we are capturing more things that are in the night sky. Even if you can see with the naked eye, they are there and they are beautiful parts that you can capture. That way, using an Astro modified camera, we can photograph many more colors, much more light, and have, I don't know, interesting images that have something different, that are more appealing maybe to the viewer's eye. And here are some examples captured this year in 2022, all of them with an Astro modified camera. And it's also valid both for the Milky Way core and especially for the winter Milky Way. That's why I wanted to mention before in the presentation, everything about winter Milky Way shooting, because in the winter night sky, there is a lot of hydrogen alpha, and it's a nice time of the year to capture all these nebulae. So as you see here, the night sky is full of these beautiful colors and beautiful light. Now, I'm going to talk now a little bit about other uses. Most people think that the Astro modification is just to capture these beautiful red colors in the night sky, but there are more uses for an Astro modded camera, and I'm going to show you now. So using an Astro modded camera, and this is the thing that surprised me the most when I was started using an Astro camera, was to shoot the foreground. So when you use an Astro camera, your foregrounds are going to be much more cleaner with less noise. And that's one of the things I love the most about using an Astro camera. In this example, here we have the Bristlecone Pine in California. This image is 60 seconds, f2.8, ISO 6400. This is the raw file. And here I simply applied a color balance calibration and I erased the shadows. I didn't do any noise reduction. I didn't do anything else. Just raise the shadows and color calibration. And if you see a detail, look, sometimes it's amazing that they look like daytime images. And it's incredible, simply incredible. When you are shooting at night, only 1 minute, and you see these images super clean, it makes all the difference. Also in this image from the Tre Cime in the Dolomites, this is, for example, 50 seconds, f2.5, ISO 6400. Here we have another shot, and if we see a detail for the foreground, you can see that it's perfectly clean. Everything is looking fine. And just even if you have like a little bit of noise, you can apply any plugin or software, but the images are coming super clean and straight out of camera. Another use is for shooting northern lights. So for northern lights photography. So this year, for example, in November, I was in northern Norway in Tromsø, or in Iceland in September. I was taking northern lights images. And I also noticed a huge difference when you shoot the aurora with an Astro modified camera. As you know, aurora is very different from Milky Way. You have to shoot very short shutter speeds, and the camera makes a big difference. So in this case, if you see the settings, they are very extreme. It's 0.8 seconds, f1.8, ISO 16,000. And if I was using a normal camera, probably I would have captured this image, because there was like a very, very strong aurora. It was moving super fast in the sky. Thanks to using the Astro camera, I could use these settings and freeze the movement of the aurora in this case. So that's something I noticed. For any type of night photography, even if it's not Milky Way, it's gonna make wonders. The other thing, and this is probably surprising and a bit striking in this presentation, is for underwater. In November, when I went to northern Norway, I was doing a trip. I took a trip to swim with orcas. I know that this sounds crazy, but yes, you can do it. And it's an awesome experience. And what I was doing, it was northern Norway, November. So there wasn't much light, maybe 3-4 hours of light, and the sun wasn't going over the fjords. So there was not much light, especially underwater. I decided to take my Sony a7 III Astro modified camera underwater using a housing case. And I was super surprised, because if you see images of orcas in November in Norway, they are all of them super noisy. I was using a prime lens at 21.8 and this camera underwater, and the images came super clean, like you can see in this shot. So there are more uses apart from night photography. Any kind of low light photography is gonna be benefit from using an Astro modification. And now I want to talk about we talk about the good, let's talk a little bit about the bad, because there are a few bad things, or at least things to consider when you Astro modify your camera. The first thing, which is pretty obvious, is that you lose official camera warranty. So don't think about doing an Astro modification, having something wrong, shipping it to your camera manufacturer and having it fixed. They won't fix it. They know you're opening your camera and you're losing the warranty. So that's something to consider. Second thing, and this is one of the most common questions, you lose the auto white balance. So since you're removing the low pass filter, you are losing the auto white balance in your camera, or at least you have it, but your cameras will look completely red out of camera. So this is a daytime image in Death Valley, and as you see, it's looking very red. The good news is that you can fix this, and I'm gonna show you how. So to fix this, simply using a gray card and a custom white balance, you can fix this issue. These cards are for color calibration. You can get them on Amazon for $5-6, so they're super cheap. And the steps are simply, first of all, get a gray card, white balance. Don't worry about the white and the black cards. You only need the gray, the neutral gray. Second thing, go outside on a sunny day around midday. You can do this whatever you like, but according to the experts, to have the better, the most accurate color calibration, you should go outside on a clear day with no clouds around midday when the sun is at zenith, and that's when you will have the more accurate calibration. Third, select your camera custom white balance. This is for Sony, but you can do it with Nikon, with Canon, with Fuji, with any cameras. Just if you don't know how to do it, check your manual. But with Sony, it's super simple. You can just go to your custom white balance settings, which is here. Select custom setup. And then you just simply have to aim at the center of the card and shoot. So imagine that this is the card. You just place your camera, put your focus point in the middle, take a shot, and then select, okay, this is gonna be my custom profile 1. You can select up to 3 profiles. So you can select maybe one for a sunny day. If you like, you can do another one for a cloudy day, or I don't know, inside a dark room, whatever you prefer. But that's the way that you do the custom calibration. And then the last step, check if the result is fine, check if the colors are looking true to your eye, and then repeat if necessary. Sometimes you have to try multiple times until you can see which are the right colors. So doing the color calibration, these are raw files. I didn't touch anything in the white balance. Here we have on top the original with the auto white balance. Underneath, we have the custom white balance. And as you see, it's looking completely natural. So this could be a picture taken with any stock camera, right?
Very cool.
All right, some things to consider. Even with a custom white balance, it's very, very likely that your camera, your images will have a slightly yellowish tint in your shots. There is also an easy way to fix this in editing. So when you're looking at your images, they will most likely look like this, which is a little bit yellow. And what you can do to fix this, I'm going to show you Lightroom, but you can use any raw editing software. So it can be Capture One, it can be the one used for Nikon, for Canon, whatever. Use the auto white balance picker, the eyedropper, and select an area. I like going to the top right corner in the night sky with no stars. And this is the key thing. Don't select any stars. Just select one area in the top right corner or the left, it doesn't matter, where there are no stars. Click. And now, boom, the camera is automatically corrected. Maybe it's not 100% fine, so we can still fine tune a little bit more the color calibration. To do this, my recommendation is to fine tune this, bump the vibrance and saturation. You can bump to 100. So vibrance saturation, boom, 100. And then what we do is strike a balance, changing the vibrance and the saturation. So moving the vibrance and saturation, we have this image, and then try to strike a balance between cool tones, warm tones, green tones, and purple tones. One tip that I'm mentioning here is to use the red color in Zophuki as a reference. So Zophuki is this cloud here, this H alpha nebula. And as you see here, there is no separation. The red is almost not visible. Here we had the red against the blue. And there is a visible separation in this nebula. So when I'm doing Milky Way core images, this is my reference for doing the color calibration with the Astro camera. Then bring the vibrance and saturation back to 0. It's gonna look like black and white. It's gonna look like gray, very grayish, but that's fine. This is perfect. Then when you are stretching your image, editing, all the colors will pop up. And this is the result from the before to the after. And trust me, you do this in 10 seconds in Lightroom, Capture One, whatever you use. It's just 10 seconds and your images are completely corrected. If you are doing a panorama, you can just copy and paste these adjustments into all the images, but it's super simple to use. So the main question that everybody asks, can you take daytime images with an Astro modified camera? Yes, you can, but with some limitations. With the right custom white balance that we mentioned, your images will have a natural look. So this image, for example, is one of my favorites from last year. This is Mount Shasta in California. This was a trip to capture the Milky Way over this volcano. I wasn't planning to do any daytime images. I was planning to do only Astro. So I took only my Sony a7 III. I usually take 2 bodies, but I only took my Astro camera. There was a beautiful sunset, and I said, okay, I'm going to shoot with my Astro camera. And boom, I had this image. I edited the images, and I had no issues, no problems, no strange colors. As you see, we're having all the beautiful colors of the sunset with the Astro camera. And this was taking at sunset, as I said.
And very important, Dan, don't forget about the thin moon. The thin moon is a great element in the composition. It's crazy.
Of course, yeah. Always. Now, a few exceptions, couple of exceptions. When there is a strong light source, like the sun, there can be some red light issues. So this example, I'm shooting directly to the sun with my Astro camera, and as you see, there's some red light. I don't know if you can notice, but there are some red light dots there. So that's one of the most common issues. If you have an Astro camera, don't try to do sun stars or things like that. They are very cool, but maybe not the best thing with an Astro camera. The other exception is at night. If there is, again, external strong light source, like the moon, like a lighthouse, there can be some red light issues. Here, for example, this is my Sony A1, and I was shooting with my Astro camera. the light coming from the screen was emitting this light, this red light. So if you are shooting to the moon or to a lighthouse or something with a strong light, you can expect to see these kind of red light issues. Some of them can be fixed in post, but you have to be a little bit careful when there is a strong light. Conclusion, and again, this is my personal view. You can use an Astro camera, an Astro modified camera in most daytime situations, but I wouldn't recommend doing a modification to your main camera body. So in my opinion, you should modify always a second camera body. If you have one camera, that's your daytime images camera, whatever, and then have a second body. It can be an old camera or just get a second body. It can be second hand, it can be cheaper, whatever. But my recommendation is getting a second body, Astro modified, and that way you can avoid these issues. So all my daytime images are with the Sony A1, and all my night images are with the Sony A7 III Astro modified. Yes, sometimes in some trips you have to take two camera bodies, but I don't know, it's something I can sacrifice. Now, talking about camera models to Astro modify, all DSLR models are good options. It can be a crop sensor, APS-C, it can be full frame, it doesn't matter. All of them are good to Astro modify. The most common models are the Nikon models like the D750, D800, D850. Canon also have a lot of models, especially the Canon 60 and the 60 Mark II. This is a note for people with a DSLR that want to do an Astro modification. Sometimes if you get in touch with the lab or you see the options, you will see an option to remove the anti-aliasing filter or AA filter. This is a filter that softens the images to avoid issues like more. So removing the AA filter translates usually into sharper images. This can be done in some cases for an extra cost in some labs, but I'm just saying, so in case you are doing an Astro modification and you see this, don't freak out, that's an option that you have. But regardless of removing this filter or not, you'll have the H-alpha coming to your camera. And again, this is only for DSLR, not mirrorless. And then for mirrorless, most mirrorless models are good. The most popular models, Sony A7S models, and Sony A7 III and A7 IV. Canon EOS R6 and R5, and Nikon Z6 and Z7 models. It doesn't matter if it's the 1, the 2, whatever. In my case, as I said, I had the Sony A7 II and the 7 III. Both are great. The 7 III is obviously better, but both are great. In my workshops, I've been dealing with a lot of Astro modifications. So I've been working with Canon, with Nikon, with Fuji, with other models, and all of them work fine. Of course, every camera is different. Every sensor has different capabilities, but all of them are fine. There is an exception where there can be some possible light leaking issues. If you are doing an H-alpha modification in Sony A7R2, R3, and R4, there can be some issues, and those cameras are not recommended. I don't know all the technical specs, but these cameras are not recommended. And also there are other models, Fuji, Olympus, Panasonic, Pentax, also cinema and medium format cameras like Blackmagic, like Hasselblad, and also compact cameras. So that's surprising. Even compact cameras can be Astro modified. Camera conversion labs. That's other of the main questions. Which camera lab can you take your camera? I don't know all the camera labs in the world. There are too many. I'm just mentioning the ones I know because I've worked with them, or because I have some clients, some workshop participants that they have modifications do with them. So the main is Spencer's camera. Spencer's, again, thank you for allowing us to see all these images. Spencer's is a lab based in Utah, in the US. It's a very popular lab. They've been doing Astro modifications for astronauts in NASA, in the International Space Station. And they've been doing this for many years. They are very professional. I didn't have any issues with them. Very fast response, very professional service. I didn't have any issue. You'll hear some stories about people having to send the cameras back to the labs We'll talk about that now. But with the Spencers, I didn't have any issues. Live Pixel is another big lab in the US that you can also use. I didn't Astro modify any camera with them, but that's probably the second option that I hear the most. AstroGear.net, again, another lab in the US. Colari Vision, and Night Sky Camera, which is a lab based in Canada, but they also do international shipping. So all these labs do international shipping. Even if you are in Europe, in South America, wherever you are, you can also make your order and get your camera. One recommendation, if you are not in the US, and even if you are in the US, my recommendation is to get a brand new Astro camera if you can. The main reason is, especially if you are out of the US, some camera models are cheaper in the US, like Sony, compared to Europe. And Spencers, for example, I don't know how, but they do a deal with Sony, with the camera brands, and they can get it cheaper. So you can actually get, even paying the shipping price, you can get the camera brand new with a new modification and pay the same price as for a brand new camera, ship it, and all that. So all these labs have international shipping. With my first camera, the Sony A7 II, that was an old camera that I had, and I just ship it and get it back. The 7 III was a brand new camera, so I bought it directly. And when the camera came to my house, it was already modified. You have this presentation. So when you download the presentation, you can just click in the different labs, and it will take you to their website. Prices, they vary according to the lab, but average price is between $300 and $500. There are some optional items like the heat reduction system, anti-dust removal, I don't know, whatever. But that's the main thing about labs. And some important things to consider when you ship your camera to Astro Modify, or if you get a new Astro Modified camera, check always these 4 things. H-alpha transmission. Make sure that your camera is capturing more light, and especially the H-alpha light. I know, especially one person, a friend of mine, he shipped the camera, he got it back, and there was no difference in the light. So that was because the Astro modification was done in a wrong way. So always make sure that you are capturing more light. Run some tests, go out at night, and make sure you are capturing more light and more colors. Light leaks, that's one of the main issues, having infrared light leaks in your images. You're seeing strange red lights and all that. Focusing issues, that's another thing, having problems focusing your lenses. And lastly, imaging issues like distortion, coma, start bloating, and something strange. Now, my recommendation to run this test for the H-alpha transmission, again, make sure that you are capturing more light and more red colors. So always, the first thing you have to do is to run this test. Second thing, and you can do this test at home, is doing a long exposure, a high ISO test. You can just get your camera, put your lens cap, and take a 10-minute exposure. Or with the ISO, shoot an image with a 52,000 ISO. And then you'll see if there's any light leaking. If there is any issue with the Astro modification, you'll probably see some red light, in your framing. Focusing issues, use all your lenses. So whatever lens you plan to use with your Astro camera, your zoom, your 20, your 24, your 40, whatever, all your lenses you have to put in your camera and make sure that you can focus past infinity. So whenever you get to infinity, make sure that you can get the barrel past infinity and the start. It's unfocused, it's blurred, it gets sharp, and then it gets blurred again. So you have to go past infinity. That's the best test. And of course, make sure that you can get sharp stars. That's the main goal. And for the other images issues, it's just simply running tests and then comparing to your pre-converted images. So before the conversion, take images, make sure you have image samples, and then run your tests and make sure there are no aberrations, no star bloating like big stars, no coma or strange things. Right? And yeah, so my conclusion with this thing about Astro modification is that with the right modification, practice, and knowledge, an Astro modified camera can take your astrophotography to the next level. it makes a huge difference. I'm talking about my own experience, and I'm talking about the experience that I see with my participants in our workshops, in our tours, with other friends. Most of my friends that are professional astrophotographers shoot with an Astro camera, and it makes a big difference. So it's something that I highly recommend. Now, before getting into a Q&A, because I'm sure that there are a lot of questions, I just want to mention very briefly a few things in case you are interested. I have a Milky Way course, as I said before. It's called Capture the Milky Way, where I teach everything about Milky Way photography from the beginning. If you're a beginner and you want to learn the first steps, to more intermediate or advanced things like a start tracking, start to finish images. There's one start to finish with Astro modified image from the Dolomites, where you can see in 2 hours how I do everything from scratch, from the beginning to the end. And it's very focused on post-processing, which is the most difficult part of any night image. I wanted to do, well, the website is academy.capturetheatlas.com. Again, academy.capturetheatlas.com. And I have created a new coupon code called PhotoPills20, and you can get 20% off. So using the code PhotoPills20 in the checkout, and this is going to be valid until next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, January 25th, it will expire. Until then, you can get 20% off, and you can get the courses separate. You can get just the Pro Tracking module. If you are a proficient photographer, you can get a pack with the 3 modules, whatever you like. So you can get a 20% off in all the courses.
Awesome. We had a question about your courses by Act 2. Do your tutorials include winter Milky Way examples and astro-modified camera shooting? Or are you preparing another course?
No, I'm actually preparing another course for that. It's in the making. So I've already gone out and taken images of the night sky. I just have to record those tutorials. The nice thing is that all the upgrades in the course are free. So since I launched the course, I've been launching free upgrades. And when there is a new video, a new upgrade, I don't charge anything. It's just uploaded. And for example, in September, I uploaded an image taken with an Astro camera in the Dolomites. And that was like a 2-hour start to finish. And that was, again, free. So all the winter Milky Way images that I will upload in next weeks and months, that's going to be included in the course.
Fantastic.
More things. If you're interested in joining me in the field and learn astrophotography, we have plenty of workshops in the US, in places, amazing places for night photography like Death Valley, Utah, Monument Valley, the Oregon coast, Acadia, and also international destinations like Australia, Patagonia, the Peruvian Andes, the Dolomites, and many more places. I'm traveling this year to South America for 3 months, to Atacama, Patagonia, and I'll be opening new destinations for next year as well, for 2024. So the best way to check all this is on my website in capturetheatlas.com/phototours. You can also subscribe there on that website, on that link, and be notified when we launch a new workshop or a new tour. And yeah, it's something I love doing. This is my real passion, being in the field with people, teaching. And yeah, I'll be more than happy to be with you teaching in the field and helping you with your photography. And last but not least, again, if you want to download the Orion calendar, it's completely free. If there is no calendar for your location, just download one for a similar location, similar latitude. Just Google Capture the Atlas Milky Way Orion calendar, or just go to this website, capturetheatlas.com/Orion-calendar. And that way you can get your Orion calendar, plan your best days, the angle, whatever you need. I hope this helps. This is completely free, and that's for you. Yeah, for social media, you can find us everywhere with @CaptureTheAtlas, mainly on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Those are the 3 main channels that we are using, and just Capture the Atlas. You can find us everywhere. Apart from the questions now in this webinar, I'm always more than happy to help you with any questions. So even if you're watching the replay, send me an email, send me a message on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you like, and I'll be more than happy to help with anything you need. Not only about Astro modifications, but any astrophotography, any trip preparation, whatever you need, I'm here for you. Yeah, so any questions that you have? I know that probably there are a few, Rafa.
Thank you so much, Dan. Let me say that's been an amazing presentation. I learned a lot, and you've answered all the questions already. So I've been reading the questions, and I said, come on, all these questions have been already answered by you. So you're really a master.
No, because it's funny because I'm getting every day a ton of questions about Astro modifications, and that was very helpful because when I was preparing this presentation,
yeah.
I was anticipating all the questions, and I said, okay, I'll try to gather everything in a small, packed presentation so you can see everything. But any other questions that you have, it can be about any other topic, whatever you like, feel free to ask.
We have a question by Eman Kulandan. He says, I noticed that you seem to use a declination bracket with counterweight on your star tracker. Is this really necessary when using 16 millimeters or 35 millimeters lens with your tracker? Why declination bracket?
Yeah, so the declination bracket, and if you want to dive more into this, I recommend the Star Tracking Masterclass that we did, because we talk a lot about that. But very briefly, the declination bracket, I only use it when there is, for example, when I'm using a longer focal length, anything above 50 millimeters, which I don't do much, but in those situations, I use a declination bracket. And when it's windy, I noticed that when there are windy conditions, especially in the desert, I shoot a lot in Death Valley, Utah, which is, especially in the spring, is very windy. Using a declination bracket helps you, be more stable, having more stability. Sometimes I don't use the counterweight. The counterweight, actually, in the last trips, I didn't even take it, because it's like a dead weight. It takes a lot of weight and space. So I'm taking just the counterweight. And the other thing is because for my tracking panorama setup, I use a special setup with the declination bracket. So that's also the main reason. Let me try to find an image here. I think it was in the... yeah, this one here. So this is what I use for my track panoramas. In this case, for example, I had a counterweight. I think it was in Bryce Canyon in one of the viewpoints, and it was extremely windy. So in that trip, I took the counterweight. It was a local trip in the US. If I travel internationally, I never take the counterweight. But usually my setup is this declination bracket, this two-way head, novel slide, L bracket, another novel slide, and my camera. I have a YouTube video on my YouTube channel on Capture the Atlas where I show one of my winter Milky Way images in Death Valley. Is a video where I show the entire process from planning the image and going to a location and then capturing the shot with this, and I show this setup. Lately, I've been using also the Benro Polaris. I mentioned that in the presentation. It's a new tracker. I'm still fine-tuning things because the last few months have been very busy for me and doing more Aurora trips. But I'm trying now doing track panoramas and different settings, and the setup is completely different. That tracker is this tracker here, and it's completely different, the setup to a normal tracker. It's more compact. You don't need all these tools. So my goal for this next year is using this tracker more and more, and hopefully replacing my main tracker in the future. So right now I'm using both of them.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, for the answer. Then we have Steve Grama. Why do I sign up for a Milky Way photo tour, but do not have an Astro camera?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Having a normal stock camera, it's completely fine. And that's the thing. I didn't mention this in the presentation. Maybe it's useful. If you are starting, if you are taking your first Milky Way images, or you're still, grasping the basics, I don't recommend doing an Astro modification. And actually, I don't recommend even trackers. If you're starting out, you just need to, have a good foundation, understand properly what you're doing, and get a good foundation in all the basics. If you're an intermediate photographer or an advanced photographer, you want to take your Milky Way image or your Astro image to the next level, that's when you can do an Astro modification. In our workshops, I will say that in Astro workshops, I would say that maybe 20% of the people bring an Astro camera, 20, 30%. After that, that's growing. There are more and more people doing modifications, but still, people are bringing normal cameras and they're capturing beautiful images. So it's just, it's like another step. When you are a freak like me, like you want to get the best possible images, you start getting into, okay, capturing more light, capturing more information, capturing more nebula. And I don't know, it's an interesting thing, but it's not for everybody. And again, it's not mandatory. And if you're starting out, I'll wait. I'll probably wait until I have more experience.
Perfect. And okay, let's go for the last question by R.J. Coleman. What filter do you need on a full spectrum modified camera for astrophotography?
Well, that question, as we said before, full spectrum is very versatile. So depending on what you're doing, there are multiple filters that you can use. For astrophotography, you can simply use an H-alpha filter. So you can put an H-alpha filter, and it's going to be similar to having a normal visible H-alpha modification. So it's exactly the same thing. But I know that some people are having issues having this because full spectrum cameras, as I said, they're a little bit more complex, and you can have some problems. So I heard some people using some visible and H-alpha filters on full spectrum, having light leaking issues, having focusing problems. But I don't know. I can tell about that because I never use a full spectrum camera. Some of my one of the participants in our Utah workshop, she brought a full spectrum camera with no filters because she didn't know that she needed a filter. Shannon, I love you, by the way. Sorry about that. And yeah, when she was doing the pictures, the images were completely gray and we couldn't recover any colors. That's why you need filters in your full spectrum modification. And then for deep sky, you can use sulfur 2, oxygen 3, specific filters for deep sky astrophotography. But that's more technical and that's not my expertise. So I cannot talk about that.
Awesome, man. Dan, you've done it again. Thank you so much for this amazing class. By the feedback we're getting in the chat, people is just blown away by all the information we learned today. A lot of cool new tricks and techniques. So thanks again for giving such a great presentation for us today.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for being here. I hope that this wasn't very technical. I hope that I didn't speak too fast. As you know, Spanish people will speak super fast. So thank you for putting up with an hour and a half of Spanish people speaking. But yeah, I hope that you found this useful, helpful. Thank you for being here. And thanks again to all the PhotoPills team, you, Rafa, Sandra in the chat, and all the team. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the field, everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And everybody here is watching my videos. They are used to my super fast. You've done a great job, better than me speaking English and giving this presentation in English. So thank you so much for the effort. Any last words you want to say before we say goodbye? Do you want to remember the discount code or website?
Yeah, well, I just want to encourage everybody to go out and shoot. So don't be afraid of the cold and the winter. Just go out and shoot. Shoot year round, practice, and just love what you do. That's the main thing. And yeah, for the presentation, Rafa is gonna leave the slides. You'll have there the discount for the course.
It's already there. It's already
Orion calendars. So all is there. And whatever you need, I'm here. So happy captures and clear skies.
Perfecto. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here with us today. Thank you everyone for watching. Still over 200 people live with us. It's been an amazing class. It's been amazing to have you all with us. And as always, if you like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next Wednesday in another video. And next Wednesday is going to be about photographing the Comet 2022 E3 ZTF, which is hopefully visible to the naked eye on February 1st and 2nd. And I think that's it. So remember that you have the power to imagine, plan, and shoot legendary photos. So bye-bye. Thank you, Dan. And I'll see you tomorrow with the Spanish version of the class. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.